Hello, Chris. Could you please tell me what one would need to do to be successful to get into the job industry in tech?
Sure. Jackie, when talking about the IT market, there are three things that are essential for your success. One is understanding the application process. Second is building a network. And the third, crafting a successful interview process. So let's take a moment and look at this interview strategy. And here we think that there are 5 questions that we think are very vital for a successful interview. So these are, one is the introduction, tell me about yourself. The second one is the project story, tell me about your last project. Then the third one is the methodologies, what was your environment like, agile vis-a-vis waterfall. Then the fourth is about the SDLC process, are you familiar with the software life development cycle? Then the final one, the fifth question that is very important that we think is vital for a candidate to understand is about the performance, right? This is the speed of existing and upcoming applications. So let's just focus on the introduction question and see what are some of the things that a candidate needs to master when they're introducing themselves or preparing the introductory remarks during an interview, right? So examining these questions are so vital because it will determine on whether one gets a job or not. And here we think there are 5 critical areas, critical elements that one need to touch on. The first one is really the domain. And under the domain, you talk about 2 things. One is the experience, and second is the industries that you have worked in. The second is your role, right? Are you a business analyst? If you're a business analyst, then you have to state about the 4 responsibilities that you are dealing with as a business analyst. So for example, gathering and documentation of business requirements, documenting those BRD, FRD, and so forth. The second, briefing both the stakeholders and the IT on the success of the progression of the projects. Then the final thing is talk about your responsibility serving as a liaison between the stakeholders and the tech team. As a developer, for example, you will do exactly the same thing, but here you are talking about your responsibility as a developer. Take, for example, a reporting developer. There are 3 areas that you need to talk about here. One is the backend, right? Establishing connections to different sources. The second is talk about what you have been able to create within the tool environment itself, within the tool itself. And the third, talk about the deployment of products or deliverables from the development to UAT and finally to production. So we think that when you're describing about responsibilities, those are the items that you need to touch base on. The third thing during your introduction that you need to touch on, Jackie, is we think is the project management part, slightly. Understanding that is very vital, right? And here you can touch on 2 things. The first is your understanding of the SDLC process, right? That is the software development life cycle. And the second is really very critical, is understanding the process of how an app is developed, how it is deployed, as I said, to both UAT and prod environment. Then the fourth thing that needs to be touched on during your introductory remarks is actually the question of security. Every company cares about the security question. And here we think that there are 3 things that you need to touch on. One is the company policies. What does the company policies say about the question of security? Very important. The second is the governmental policies, being acquainted with the laws such as HIPAA laws. Then the third is the safeguards that you have done as a developer, right, to safeguard the tools, that the applications that you are building, to put minimum standards in place in order to safeguard and protect clientele information, right? And the final thing that is very critical is a mundane point here, but really it's an overwhelming point, is communication. It's everything. The entire IT infrastructure is all about communication. And here we think by expressing yourself in 2 ways, highlighting how an effective communicator you are in building those highly scalable presentations to be able to communicate to both the business and the IT team is very vital for your success for the interview. So again, we think in your introductory remarks, 5 elements. One is the domain, second is your role, third is the project management, fourth is the security, and second is the final point here is communication. Right. And we think crafting your message around those 5 topics will be essential on whether you'll be able to get the job or not. So please join us for the next session, data analysis in stock trading, and how we can utilize the tools of trade in leveraging your portfolio. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. That was extremely helpful. The tips and the 6 tips on how they need to get into the tech industry, the important questions to answer and how to address those. So thank you very much, Chris. We'll be here on the next session. Thank you for your tips today.
Thanks, Jackie.
You're welcome.